Oh, this is exciting. Hi, Donnie. Hi, Frank.
Hello.
And Lily and Luanzian, is that how you pronounce that? Risa and Jeff. And Mela. Right. Did I get it?
Mila.
Mila, my. Okay.
Another arrow.
That's right. Another arrow. Okay. That's right. If I was visiting a strange village, I would be toast already. Welcome, everybody. Now, I have just been told that what I say next is a life and death issue, so I better say it right. Asiem na siaya, Entha Sean Gallagher. Tan Itzan Utal Calgary. Itzan Manach Utal Robert Gallagher e Ruth Cleveland. Heitzepka Quansalas Gakip Atana Quail. Siet ala ta snanemach mustimach ni hachwishes tantamnach Atana Quail. My respected friends, my name is Sean Gallagher. I wish to thank you all for gathering on this occasion. We give our highest gratitude and appreciation to the people of Snuneymuxw for allowing us on their territory. The Nanaimo Arts Council would also like to acknowledge all of the many other First Nations on whose territory this contest took place. Haitska Siem. I would first like to introduce respected Snuneymuxw elder Gary Manson to welcome us here today and to say a few words. We give our highest. Thank you. Mr. Gary Manson, please.
Siem Nitsiaya, respected friends, relatives, Siem Missionatin Mistimoch, respected visitors, Siem Huayem Mistimoch, Heid Sapka, Kwasiala Patanaquail, respected storytellers, thank you all for gathering here today. See it as Yais Mistimo, Wheelton is Yais Atanaquail. I want to also thank the people that made this day possible to honor the storytellers that are here today. And I'm very honored to be a part of it. And to start you off in your day, I welcome you to our territory, and it's the name of territory. But I want to chant a song for you to start us off in a good way. And the chant that I'm going to chant to you is called Hitluk in our language, which means excitement. And we sing this song when we're celebrating. Think some good thoughts, some happy thoughts. with that excitement, and I'm very proud of you all. And I'm proud of the people that are honoring you. We need to honor our people more. And I'm grateful that this day has come forward, and I'm grateful for the people who did the work to bring these awesome storytellers forward. And I'll leave you with that and pass it back to you, Sean.
Hachkasiyam, Gary. Thank you very much. That was lovely. Well, this year's short fiction contest was extremely successful. We had 230 people who submitted a total of 286 stories. This included 139 young authors in the junior and youth categories, and they submitted a total of around 180 stories between them. The competition was extremely tough, and the judges had a really difficult time choosing from among so many good stories. I'd like to briefly acknowledge our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't be able to present this programming. We gratefully acknowledge the sponsorship and material assistance from Vancouver Island University's Department of Creative Writing and Journalism, and especially Frank Moore, who is with us today, and Sonnet Labbe, who is also with us, and Joy Googler. Also, the sponsorship and assistance of the Vancouver Island Regional Library, especially Jen Sepper, Junior Category Judge Peter McGuire, and Youth Category Judge Aria Fisher. Our thanks also go to the Nanaimo Foundation, and especially Lori Beanert for its support in reaching junior and youth applicants. I'd also like to thank Doretta Lau for all her work as the adult judge. Special thanks go to our core funding from the City of Nanaimo and from the BC Arts Council, to Nanaimo Arts Council Director Margot Federick, who did a great deal of work behind the scenes on this project, and Nanaimo Arts Council Director Becky Thiessen, who is running the Zoom controls here today, and to the rest of the NAC Board of Directors, many of whom made valuable contributions. Before we begin the actual readings, please be advised that some of the stories contain adult content or scenes which some people may find disturbing. So now I'd like to introduce Mr. Frank Moore, who will be presenting the Junior Category Awards. Mr. Moore is a Canadian playwright, director, and journalist, originally from Edmonton, Alberta, but he's also lived in New York City and Calgary. His plays include Odd Jobs, which has been produced internationally and was a finalist for the Governor General's Award, The Third Ascent, which toured Canada and won the Edmonton Sterling Award for Outstanding New Play, Supreme Dream with Rhonda Todd in 1995, which also toured Canada, and Big Baby 2004. His plays are published by the Playwrights Guild of Canada, Playwrights Canada Press, and online by ProPlay. Frank Moore has been the artistic producer of Western Edge Theatre in Nanaimo since 2002, and he's the editor and media critic for the online magazine backofthebook.ca. Now, we did have the certificates. Maybe I'll just show you one certificate quickly. I was putting them all on slides. Rather than put them on slides, I'm just going to show you one, if I can get this going. They all look like this with different names. and with no further ado, I will pass it on to Frank to stop the share, to present the awards. Mr. Frank Moore.
Thank you very much, Sean. Are you all hearing me okay? Nod if you can hear me. Got it. Thank you. And if you like, when the ceremony's over, I will perform some songs from Supreme Dream. They are the songs of the Supremes. So you may not want that, but I'm here. Anyway, thank you, Sean. I have to say, Sean and the Nanaimo Arts Council have done a superb job of both resurrecting the short fiction contest. It had a hiatus last year. It's back with a vengeance and doing an extraordinarily good job of, among other things, seeing to it that so many people entered this year. As somebody who's had that responsibility in the past, I really commend everybody at the Arts Council for the wonderful job you have done with this edition of it. Now, I've been asked to begin the presentation of the finalists. The judge in the category can't be with us, so I will be reading that judge's remarks. This is in the junior category. I'll read his remarks, and then he was Peter McGuire of the Vancouver Island Regional Library. And then I will announce the winner, and this will be in ascending order. So we'll start with the third place finalist. And of it, the judge said, the story is called Gone. I thought this story was a moving description of a young child's experience of loss and decision to accept a new family. There were some great turns of phrase, including, quoting, "Instinctively, I reached for Trunk, my stuffed elephant. He wasn't there." Another grim reminder of the fire in which he burned. Another quote, "I felt that falling down the stairs feeling once again." And another quote, "Sometimes things get hard, but life will go on." And the judge says, I think this is the judge, "That made me really sad because your life did not go on," or perhaps it's from the story, I can't quite tell. The judge continues, "The writing on the whole was pretty superior, and while this kind of story is a bit conventional, the execution was solid. It felt very real and sincere and had some of the best dialogue in any of these submissions." Oh, you know what? I've done this wrong. I've read the first place winner first. Sorry. Never mind. I'm going to go back. At least I didn't name the winner yet. I'm going to go back and read the third place finalist first. Here it is. The Adventures of Mel B. Hargrove. I think irreverent trickster stories are very hard to write well, especially when characters are trying to be annoying. And I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this. This might have less polish than some of the other stories I reviewed and probably could have used an edit for layout, but the voice is so distinctive, it was a genuine joy for me to read. This story reads aloud exceptionally well, and I found myself reading the story out loud and being overjoyed by how well it flowed. The one big problem with having no parents is that you always have to do all the work around the house. This is a quote, including cleaning. I don't do that very often. Mowing the lawn. I don't do that very often either. Cutting down a tree for Christmas. I use a fake one. And going shopping. That's the end of the quote. And the winner of the third place award in the junior category, which is a $25 in cash and a $25 gift certificate, is, let me make sure I get this right. Yes, Maya or Mila Hosey for The Adventures of Mel B. Hargrove. Now, Sean, should I continue on to the second place finalist?
I believe we should have Mila read her excerpt now, please.
Okay.
Chapter 1, Responsibilities. My name is Mel B. Hargrove. I am 9.5 years old. I live in California on St. John's Road. My house is decently sized and is very strangely architected. I have no parents. Well, of course I have parents. If I didn't have parents at all, I wouldn't even be here. But the thing is that I'm not 100% sure where they are. That's why I have to take responsibility for going to bed. First things first, I ask myself calmly and politely. Then if I don't listen, I ask myself a little more strictly. And then if I still don't listen, well, that's when it comes to the point where I deserve a big spanking. Anyway, moving on. The one big problem with having no parents is that you always have to do all the work around the house, including cleaning. I don't do that very often. Mowing the lawn. I don't do that very often either. And cutting down a tree for Christmas. I use a fake one. And going shopping. I definitely go shopping. I live really close to Walmart and Superstore. I live closer to Walmart. That's why I go there more often. Last weekend, I went shopping for gingerbread supplies. While I was paying for them, the cashier girl asked me, "May I speak to your parents, please?" I stood there very, very quietly. So finally, I took some random old lady by the hand. This is my grandma, I said, looking at her, hoping the grandma would help me out a little. You won't believe what happened next. The grandma lady said, "So you wanted to speak with me?" We both smiled at each other. Chapter 2, The Kidnapper. Suddenly, I woke up in the middle of the night in a dude's white van. I looked at the front seat to the person who was driving. I could not believe it. I was being kidnapped. Nothing so fantastic ever happened to me before. Yes, I'm actually going to have a real family, and I'm no longer going to be super lonely. Well, I mean, I do have Mrs. Harrison, but she's old and she's going to die soon anyway. Oh my God, I cannot thank you enough. The guy just stood there quietly, looking very, very confused. So finally he said, how old are you exactly? 9.5. Why? Because you're acting dumb. Just hurt my feelings. Oh my God, for once, will you just be quiet? Please, I mean no harm. I just made a voice like Yoda. You know him? He's from a movie called Star Wars. Have you watched it? It's a really good movie. I just kept on talking and talking for the whole entire ride. He was looking very annoyed. He didn't look as amused as I thought he would be, so I stopped finally. He looked relieved. Can I say one more thing? I asked. Make it fast. I mean 2 things. Again, I say, make it fast. Okay, firstly, it's not firstly, it's first. No, I'm pretty sure it's firstly. Well, it's not. Okay, geez, fine. First one is this is a pretty good Christmas present since there is only 6 more months. I'm really excited. Next. Secondly, I second. Fine, okay. Second, I actually get to have my first Christmas with the real family. Even though so far you're kind of a pea brain, I said. He looked like he had regretted kidnapping me. I'm sort of glad, because it turns out getting kidnapped isn't so fun after all. I wanted to ask one more question, but right when he noticed I was about to ask something, he started blasting a song on the radio. I was getting really annoyed. I mean, I did like the song, but still. I was not excited after all. Firstly, he wasn't very nice. And secondly, he calls me dumb when he's the one who didn't think that firstly and secondly are words. His house was really small and he lived alone too, so wouldn't even make much of a difference than when I lived in my house. I already miss my house. I kind of want to go home. He showed me to my bedroom. It was in the basement. I saw an old Christmas tree he didn't use since he had a new one. I also saw a fake magic wand. Well, at least I think it's fake. Yep, it's fake. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That was a terrific reading, as well as an excellent story. So thanks very much. All right, now moving on. The second place winner in the junior category, the judge said of the Brave and Mighty Peto, I think it is. This story describes the daily life and conflict of some adventurous ducks. And if this story were edited, illustrated, and turned into a picture book, I suspect it would be a storytime favorite. I love the distinct voices of the ducks. Albert, the nerdy duck, greets his close friend by saying, "How has your day been progressing?" And his favorite book is an abandoned dictionary. The chaotic fight between the bully ducks and Peto feels like what you'd see at a duck pond. There's a really good-natured, peaceful energy to the story, and I found it a genuine joy to read. So the second place winner of a $50 in cash and a $50 gift certificate is Risa Coulson for the Brave and Mighty Peto.
Okay. One bright and sunny spring day, Pato the duck went out for an afternoon swim in the pond. The pond is home to many creatures, including frogs, bugs, some algae, and many ducks. It was a Friday, and school was almost done for the day. After school is Pato's favorite time. That's when the people come to feed him. Pato's best friends, Lucinda and Albert, waddled over and splashed in beside him. Suddenly, Pato's favorite kid came over with some birdseed and sat on a bench. She is 12 years old, and her name is Kayla. "Hello, ducks," she said in a sweet voice. The 3 ducks swam closer to her, and she threw some birdseed in. The 3 ducks ate eagerly. Kayla was with her big sister named Ariana, who was talking to her best friend Audrey over at the swing. Some other ducks swam over to Kayla. Their names were Franklin and Stuart. All of the animals in the pond know each other. Albert blurted out, "I'm going to head over to that old fellow over there. He looks lonely." Albert may be strange, but he's one of the kindest ducks in the pond. That's why he's one of Pato's best friends. A few minutes later, the pond bullies came over. The big buff one is named Boy, the creepy-looking one is named Troy, and the quiet but still mean one is Dave. They were all ducks. Just when Ariana came over to Kayla to tell her it was time to go home, the group of bullies bolted over and started quacking as loud as they could. They flew out of the water and dive-bombed on Ariana, pecking her and quacking with all their might. Ariana ran as fast as she could, screaming and tumbling. Kayla just watched. She was terrified, but also tried as hard as she could to not burst out laughing. The ducks followed Ariana all the way to the playground. Lucinda was the first duck to notice. "Oh no! The bullies are at it again! Somebody save that poor child!" she hollered. Pato, with his brave personality, flew out of the pond and crashed into Troy. Troy was screeching with anger, and it started attacking Pato. That happened right in front of Dave, who came stumbling over top of them. They came rolling right into Roy, who was pecking Ariana at her shoes. Ariana tripped a bit, but didn't fall. She started running in the other direction, opening a clear path for the ducks to roll down a hill and into the field. Pato started flying back to the pond, but Dave headbutted him in mid-air. Pato started falling, but Kayla ran to the rescue and caught Pato. Rory started running over to Kayla, but a random goose who was flying up above heard all of the racket and got annoyed. So the goose flew down and scared all of the evil bullies away. Kayla saw how mad the goose was, so she let go of Pato and ran away while Pato defended her off. When Kayla was safe with her sister, they ran out of the park and all the way back to their house. The goose was just about to honk at Pato when a different goose started calling to it. "Come on, Diane, we don't have time for this." "Fine," Diane said stubbornly. She glared at Pato and flew back up to the other goose. Pato waddled back to the pond in shock. "That was really brave," Franklin the duck exclaimed. Before Pato could say anything, Lucinda swam over. "Yes, it was. Of course it was. That's one of my best friends over there. Come on, give this hero some space," Lucinda said. Pato blushed. "Thank you, everyone." Then Pato looked over at Albert, who was still with the old man, swimming around in circles. The old man was smiling. Pato swam over to Albert. "Did you see what I did?" Pato asked. Albert looked confused. "What do you mean?" Pato smiled. "Oh, nothing." Then they swam together for the old man, which made this man smile even more.
Good. Thank you, Risa. And I'm sorry, I mispronounced the name of your character. It's not Pato, it's Pato. I should have known. Congratulations. So finally, the first place winner in this category, I read all of the judges' remarks previously, so I'll just quickly excerpt parts of them. The judge said, "I thought this story was a moving description of a young child's experience of loss and decision to accept a new family. There were some great turns of phrase. It felt very real and sincere and had some of the best dialogue in any of the submissions received." So the first place winner in the junior category of $100 cash and a $75 gift certificate is Leonie Murdoch for her story, Gone.
The outdoor wind welcomed me and pushed along the clouds that covered the stars and made the moon's light seem faded. I knew that they were still there, I just couldn't see them. What I could see, though, were houses that towered over the road, with their lights extinguished and their curtains drawn shut. A gust blew my hair out of my face and I shivered as the cool air sank into me, running down my spine and all the way to my toes. I crossed the road to the tree where 2 ropes were tied to a branch and attached precariously to a wooden board. The tree swing. I sat down and it moaned. I slowly rocked back and forth, breathing in the cool night air. Here, There was room to think. I wasn't lying in my bed uselessly with my emotions packed in. Here, they seemed to float around, and it made them less overwhelming. I shivered again. Out here is better than in here, I told myself. Here, you're free. I sighed. Free. I wasn't inside a house that could burn down any second. I was safe, just like Aunt Edna had said. Uncle Nick has been staying in his bedroom overall. His brother was my dad, so I don't blame him. I was an only child, but I can imagine that losing a sibling is difficult. When I arrived, he greeted me. That was the last time I saw him, and he looked out of sorts. The cold finally started to get to me after about 20 minutes. I headed back inside and crawled into bed. I read until I fell asleep with my book on my chest. Morning light seeped through the light drapes covering the windows. I glanced around to see whose footsteps had awoken me, Mom's or Dad's. When I spotted Aunt Edna's red slippers, I felt that falling down the stairs feeling once again. I rubbed my eyes. She looked tired. She had dark shadows under her eyes and she seemed distant. "Good morning, Reese. How did you sleep?" she croaked, obviously trying to sound cheerful. "Not good," I replied honestly. She frowned, the crease between her light eyebrows deepening. She looked older lately, with wrinkles around her small brown eyes. Her thin, pale loops drooped slightly. Her brown hair was streaked with gray. I pulled on her housecoat and walked over to the kitchen to see what she was preparing. My heart sank as I realized it was only toast. My mom had always made me omelets on the weekends. I felt my feelings filling me again and I decided I had to do something. "I'm going to the tree swing," I decided. "Aren't you going to have breakfast?" "I'm not hungry," I explained. "Reese, you've eaten barely anything since you got here. I want you to eat," Aunt Edna argued. I reluctantly poured myself a small bowl of cereal. Each bite was hard to stuff down, and the food sank into my stomach and made it ache. I then got dressed because my aunt made me. The day seemed to pass by quickly, with Aunt Edna and I arguing. Really, though, the scene of the fire kept creeping into my head more than once that day. I found myself crying again. I thought I heard Aunt Edna sniffle a few times too, but her eyes had been watery since she woke up, so it was hard to tell if she was upset. As Aunt Edna and I ate frozen pizza together, her son or my cousin was still at work, I thought of what my parents would say to me about this whole disaster. I thought of my dad. "When life gives you lemons, make lemon meringue pie," he would chuckle. Lemon meringue pie had been his favorite. My mom would tell me, "Sometimes things get hard, but life will go on."
Thank you very much, Leonie. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to all the finalists, and congratulations to everybody who entered, because you know what? Just writing the story and finishing it is a big deal. So good for you all. And now I will turn this back to Sean.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was great. I would now like to introduce Sonnet Labbe, who is the chair of the Creative Writing and Journalism Department at Vancouver Island University. Ms. Labbe has a PhD in English Literature from the University of British Columbia, a master's degree in English Lit from the University of Guelph, and a BFA in Film and Video from York University. Wow. She has taught English at universities in South Korea, creative writing at the U of T and UBC's Okanagan campus, and she's currently teaching here, as I said, at VIU. Her work has appeared in a number of literary journals and several anthologies. She was shortlisted for the 2010 CBC Literary Award for Poetry, won the Bronwyn Wallace Memorial Award for Most Promising Writer Under 35. In 2013, she was the artist in motion for 2017 Starts Now, a series of talks launched by CBC Radio Canada, Via Rail and Community Foundations of Canada, that joined Canadians across the country in a conversation about how to celebrate the Canadian sesquicentennial. Two of her books, Anima Canadensis and Sonnet Shakespeare, are available right here in Nanaimo at the Nanaimo Art Gallery store. Sonnet, if you would please introduce the youth category people and have them read. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Let me just say what a privilege it is to get to hear these stories, and I'm so looking forward to hearing the stories of the winners of the youth category. So the judge for the youth category is Aria Fisher, and I'll be reading Aria's comments. So the third place winner of $75 cash and a $25 gift certificate, is for a story called An Articulate Shadow. And here's a quote. They are left with their ersatz while we are left to slowly decay. Our perfect self is still suspended or lost. So Aria says, this was wonderful prose. It has all the wrappings of nostalgia with a touch of the uncanny valley. As I read it, I found myself thinking of Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. Nothing else remains. So I'd like to congratulate our third place winner, Miriam Mulatu, and invite her to read.
Okay. Someday we'll all just be photos, rummaged through with dirty, stained fingers, suffocated in square plastic coffins, buried in photos of others or crucified onto a wall, until a child pulls out the pin with their pudgy, overfed hands. The pin that had mercifully stabbed us into place, letting us gently fall and swept under the rug. If not, perhaps lugged in wallets, shoved in back pockets, outbid by the idolized paper that surrounds us, until crooked hands steal us away. Without money, in this dark case, we are thrown into the trash, unneeded. Memories of our faces will fade, and our voices will be remote shadows of whispers. Almost our true wails, but never quite. The memories of us they tried to hold on to, but it was as if they were pulling at ribbons of smoke, always so near, but when this memory is lent upon, it dissipates, forgotten in the frailty of the human mind and memory. All that's remembered is the frozen shock that is our pictures, the counterfeit smiles, pushing away memories of real ones and poses remembered rather than dances. Photos with the smallest of imperfections already deleted or glossed over, until all they have is the mannequin of who they truly knew. They are left with the ersatz, while we are left to slowly decay. Our perfect self is still suspended or lost. The few who treasure these will only be haunted, staring into the desolate, soulless eyes, begging the doll to scream, to yell, to move, to whisper, to breathe, to blink, to twitch, if only a twitch. We in turn, begging to feel, to let them understand we are there, to show we want to, but are yet incapable. That our efforts are in vain, but to let them know that there were, in fact, efforts. There was effort, but for what? With nothing said, we are picked up less and less. They are told to leave us, to not forget, but to keep us in the back of our minds. But what use are we there, to be kept in the dark? We surfaced, and just as we open our sewn mouths, evanesced. What are photos? What are we, if not but the faces of death? He had finally finished talking, so I looked over to smile at him, but he had already left. I couldn't be sure if he was even there at all. He wasn't here now, so I guess he never was.
Thank you, Miriam. Our second place winner, who wins $100 in cash and a $50 gift certificate for a story titled Long Live the King. Here's a quote. The twisted smile appears again, curling across his face, bringing along the depraved insanity behind his eyes, something sick and power-hungry. So the judge says, I could see this scene as clear as day as I read. The imagery is beautiful, painting a perfect picture, and yet still leaving a touch of mystery to it. I wanted to know so much more. It felt like a pilot episode of a TV show, and I need to see the rest of the season. So our second place winner is Lily Strawn. And Lily Strawn, you're just going to have to remember her name or their name because they're not reading today, and you'll just have to like watch out for their name in print sometime in the future and remember that you heard that little excerpt of Lily's work here today. But congratulations, Lily. Okay, and our first place winner, who wins $150 cash and a $75 gift certificate for a story called Nyctophobia. And here's a quote. Allie was afraid of the dark. Oh, that's the quote that the judge picked. That's it. That's all they picked. So Aria says, I'm a sucker for repeated lines that open and close a story, and this had a perfect setup. I enjoyed the flow of the story, the characterization, and of course the horror that slowly crept up on me. I've been listening to a horror podcast lately, and this felt like it would have been a candidate for an episode. I also appreciate the ending that left a little something to the imagination, like the dark itself. So please join me in congratulating our first place winner, Luancian Llewellyn. Am I pronouncing that right? No? Okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I have unmuted. Sorry, I couldn't find the button.
How can I pronounce your name?
Luan Shan.
Luan Shan, thank you so much.
Should I read the whole thing? It's kind of long.
I don't know what the directive for the excerpt is, Sean.
Yes, the excerpt should be about 3 minutes. If you read the whole story, then people won't want to come back and read it online.
Got it.
So,
all right.
Thanks.
Okay. Allie is afraid of the dark. It was no secret. She'd been scared of the dark ever since I met her. It wasn't a normal fear either, just straight up paranoia. Hell, she'd just turned 14 and still refused to sleep without a nightlight, like something was out to get her if she didn't. So I wasn't surprised to see her excited over the flashlight she'd gotten for her birthday just before we went on our annual camping trip. It was bright yellow and altogether really boring, but she enthused about it the entire drive to the lake. If I'd known that was all it took to impress her, I'd have gotten her way less than $50 in a card. We arrived close to noon, and Allie's stepdad started setting up the camper where he'd be staying. Instead of sitting and rotting in the sunlight, Allie and I decided we'd go find somewhere to set up our tent. I vetoed everywhere near the lake after the incident where my air mattress accidentally floated out onto the water, and I woke up to a frog inches away from my face. I didn't like sleeping near that place. Allie didn't want to sleep anywhere too close to the trailer because of the time her stepdad thought it'd be funny to jump scare us at midnight. Spoiler, it was not funny. Eventually, we settled on an area, a clearing just off the trail. It was out of view of the campsite, making it look like we were surrounded by forests. Like Survivor, except in reality, the site was a 2-minute jog away. Yo, check it out, I exclaimed, pointing to the edge of the clearing. The tire swing. Allie turned, arching an eyebrow. That thing's 20 pounds away from snapping. It could hold our luggage at most. She signaled to the frayed rope. You're boring. I rolled my eyes, propping a foot on it. The swing nearly gave under my weight, branch creaking. Okay, never mind. Maybe you're in the right. I stepped away. Luggage holder it is. Allie chuckled. You brought the mosquito nets, right? She glanced at me, hammering one of the tent pegs into the ground. Yeah, my mom put them in the bag. I leaned against the tire swing, but it didn't really shield me from the sunlight. Bugs are going to be bad this year, though, dude. You might have to deal with a mosquito bite. She shuddered. No way. Do you know how many diseases those things carry? Malaria, yellow fever, filariasis, dengue, and a lot more. I deadpanned, quoting the exact speech she recited constantly. We've been over this. I held up my arm, pointing to where I'd been bitten by a mosquito earlier in the summer. It's not that bad. You're not going to get malaria. She ignored me, checking over the tent she'd finished setting up. Looks like this is good to go. Thanks for the help, by the way. She shot me a look. My pleasure, I smiled back. She gave me a hand sign that definitely didn't represent gratitude, gaze drifting to the forest. You don't think there's anything in there, right? She asked, an edge to her voice. What? You mean like bears are insane cannibals? I shrugged. One of those is. I mean, unless bears are out this time of year too. She threw a pine cone at me. Not funny, Liz. She made a face. Seriously, you sleep like a log. What if a bear comes near us and I can't wake you up? Leave me and run away in terror. Right, I forgot who I was talking to, she sighed, wiping her glasses on her shirt. I'm gonna go get us soda. Can you set up the sleeping bags? On it, boss. I waved as she left, pulling the sleeping bags into the tent behind me. My mom had gotten us a new tent last year since we had accidentally torn a giant hole into the old one. This one was smaller and made for 2 people instead of 4, meaning no more air mattresses. That was probably for the better. We'd have ended up popping them eventually. I set the lantern down in the middle before flopping down on my sleeping bag. Footsteps, footsteps. Yeah, those were definitely footsteps, something like that, coming from the woods. Hikers, maybe? They were drawing closer. I tensed. I was about to yell at them to go away when they stopped abruptly. Heavy breathing sounds, loud and hitched. I couldn't tell if it was from their mouth or nose. No, that wasn't a person. It couldn't be. Humans didn't breathe that loud and humans didn't breathe like that. But it wasn't a bear. A bear would have been a lot louder. The tire swings started creaking. It was slow in control at first, but it grew louder. Something was pushing it. That couldn't be the wind. I gulped, praying they'd go away. The creaking just got louder and more violent. The swing would snap any second. Were they trying to break it? The cream soda goddess arrives, a voice called. The swing stopped abruptly. I heard footsteps racing back into the woods, faster than I could even comprehend. By the time they were completely out of earshot, the swing was still creaking. The tent door unzipped and Allie tossed me a can of soda. What's the deal? She laughed. You look like you just saw a ghost. I didn't answer. Allie opened her can, raising an eyebrow at me. I think someone came up to the tent. I'll stop there. It's long.
On a moment of tension, I want to know what happens to them. Thank you so much. Congratulations to all the winners, and I'll throw it back to Sean.
Thank you very much, Sonnet. That was awesome. Another very great group of young authors. Now, I promised people an intermission here on the itinerary. We are running a little bit late. What is the consensus? Should we just continue or should we take a couple of minutes break? Anybody who wants a break, put up their hands. Anybody that wants to keep going, put up their hands. Okay, we will keep going. Well, now I will introduce Doretta Lau as the judge of the adult category. Doretta Lau is the author of the short story collection, How Does a Single Blade of Grass Thank the Sun? And the poetry chapbook, Cause and Effect. The collection was shortlisted for the City of Vancouver Book Award, longlisted for the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award, and was named by The Atlantic as one of the best books of 2014. In 2013, she was a finalist for the Writers' Trust of Canada McClellan and Stewart Journey Prize. She has written on arts and culture for Artforum International, South China Morning Post, the Wall Street Journal Asia, Art Review, The Walrus, and Leap. Her fiction and poetry have appeared in Day One, Event, Grain Magazine, The New Quarterly, Prairie Fire, Prism International, Rice Paper, Room Magazine, Subterrane, and Zen Monster, which I haven't read, but I love the title of that last one. She is writing a comedic novel about an inept company struggling to open a theme park about death, and an essay collection about navigating volcanoes, illness, and other enormities on the worst timeline. Doretta, if you would read the winners of the adult category, please.
Okay, thank you. So starting with third place, it's a story called The Wages of War. Shortly before the end of the Second World War, a young man delivers bad news to the parents of a soldier. The prose is anchored with a delicious sense of history. Quote, there had been a settlement on the edge of the Mendip Hills since Neolithic times when cave dwellers had lived there. Romans later occupied the area, mining for lead, giving the villagers an opportunity to eke out a living for generations. So the winner of the $300 cash prize is Hilda Weisflock. Welcome, Hilda.
Yeah. On March the 2nd, 1945, Dave Forrester arrived in the village of Coombe Dingle. He was 28, clean-shaven, but bedraggled in a war-worn uniform that draped his bony body. He carried a tattered kit bag and he bore unhappy news. There had been a settlement on the edge of the Mendip Hills since Neolithic times, when cave dwellers had lived there. Romans later occupied the area, mining for lead, giving the villagers an opportunity to eke out a living for generations. But mining had wrought its toll on the men, leaving their families destitute, and villagers often died from long-term effects of eating fish from the toxic lead-laden pond. Disasters were a part of life, creating an enduring bond between families. By the end of the 19th century, some 30 houses clung to the sides of the gorge. Mining had ceased and villagers turned to sheep farming, shepherding the animals on the heath above the gorge. Once World War II began, those with a few square feet of garden grew vegetables where they had once grown flowers. The older people shook their heads and said they had never known such food shortages. And the sorrow of untimely loss had not ended when the mines closed. 3 men of Coombe Dingle had died in this current war, and residents prayed it would end. Several village sons were still over there fighting. Light was fading as Dave knocked on the door of the first house he saw. A rosy-cheeked woman in her 60s answered. "Hello, I'm looking for the Tippett's house. Do you know them?" Dave asked. "Oh, my dear, course we do. Up the hill on the other side by the brook, with a green door. We've known 'em all our lives. I do hope you've brought 'em some good news. They bain't heard nothing for weeks from their son. 'Tis terrible, just waiting. Perhaps you met him." "Yes, I knew him well. I'll be off now, thank you." Dave hurried away. He crossed the bridge and used the green door's brass knocker. The door was opened by a tall, broad-shouldered man with greying hair and a leathered face. Dave knew it was Ben's father. There was a definite family resemblance. Strain showed on the older man's face, brightening momentarily when he saw the uniform of the man on his doorstep. "Hello, what can I do for you?" Frank Tippett said. "Mr. Tippett?" "Aye, that be I. Do you bring news of our Ben?" he asked, unable to hide a sudden fear. "Yes, may I come in?" "Mabel, we've a visitor," Frank called out, leading Dave into the living room where a meager fire burned in the grate. A small woman entered, removing her apron. Dave recognized her from a photo Ben had shown him. I think I'll stop there if that's, I've done my 4 minutes.
Thank you, Hilda. Okay, now for the second place story. It's called Spellcaster's Hands. A violent encounter with a stranger changes the fate of a village. The story, told from a powerful first-person point of view, takes the reader on an unforgettable journey. Quote, "I did not see the spell for what it was at the time. A murmur traveled through the crowd, uncertainty taking hold." And the winner of a $400 cash prize is Jonathan Lister. Welcome, Jonathan, and I hope I got your name right.
You did, which is rare. People see the Y and think it's Leicester. Her hands are what I remember most, shaping our future with curving palms and long, graceful fingers. They were clenched as Tom and my father dragged her into our village. When they bound her, she stood tall, back pressed to the iron stake, feet buried in cinders and ashes. Her tunic fringe danced in the breeze that pushed dust devils across the parched dirt, but her hands were still. They looked soft, deceptively helpless against rough hempen cords that hot spring day. Her gaze flitted like a bird seeking a nest, hopping from one face to another as we gathered around. I saw her focus on Chief as he strode toward us in the embroidered robes of his station. He stepped to the side of the rusted post and turned to face a mass of sweating bodies. We had come in from the wasted fields to witness the latest burning. I stood with my mother, away from the eagerest. Each time a sacrifice was brought forth, Mother warned me of the unruliness of otherwise kind people. Chief lifted his arms. We hushed. He had the gift of magic when he spoke. The gods are displeased, he declared in his rich voice. We must sacrifice again. I call upon the gods to accept our gift. Bless our fields, fill the bellies of our children. Send the rain down upon us as you do for the folk of the mountains. At mention of the mountains, our faces turned north. We could see the foothills and the long rising slopes ending in their sun-drenched peaks. Between those dry hills and the craggy gray stone was a rich green band. We all knew tales of its abundance. The mountain folk were fat with blessings, but the gods turned their backs on us. We must give them the sacred flames they demand. He pointed at the bound woman. Let each of us bring wood for the god's fire. I'm your sacrifice, the woman said, astonished, her voice carrying as Chief's did. Then she did a strange thing. She laughed. The clot of people before me shared a sharply drawn breath. I remembered the last few sacrifices. They had begged and wept and wailed before the flames were even lit. The woman's shoulder moved. She stepped from the stake, bindings falling away like chaff. Light glinted on a strip of jagged metal dropping into the cinders. My father and Tom stepped forward, arrows drawn. Chief jumped back. How can I be your sacrifice? The woman asked. Her hands bent as if the wind blew them toward Chief. I am of the mountains. Rain falls when we need it. Our fields feed us well. I only come to the lowlands to gather seeds and roots of plants that once refused to grow in our mountains. Now they grow richly for us. Chief scowled. Bind her again. Tom lowered his bow, glancing at my father before advancing on the woman. My people feast while yours starve, the woman called out to the crowd. We thank you for the sacrifices you have made on our behalf. Tom stopped, confused. He looked at Chief. The woman turned to Chief in his fine robes of office, reaching toward him. Great Lord of the lowlands, you have given us such wealth. Our children grow strong in the mountains. Let me thank you for your generosity. I will gladly burn, knowing my smoke will make the gods smile even more upon my people. She made that gathering gesture again, a sweep of her fingers that took in Chief, and Chief alone. I did not see the spell for what it was at the time. A murmur traveled through the crowd, uncertainty taking hold. You have taken others from the road and brought them here to burn. Another motion in Chief's direction, hands splayed as though embracing him. You have sacrificed my people, likely those of the Western Plains, even coastal traders traveling the low roads past the bones of the metal beasts. You have greatly pleased the gods of others. You have greatly pleased the gods of others. Only now do I understand why the mountains grow rich. We harvest the gods' blessings for those of our people whose flesh you have cast to the heavens. Silence fell over the crowd. Eyes swiveled toward the mountains again. Those beside Mother. Yearning and envy filled them, a long hunger. But answer this, the woman said, her voice smooth, landing like sweet rain. Why do you not make sacrifices for your own well-being? As she uttered the word sacrifice, her hands seemed to caress Chief from a distance. I sometimes wonder if Chief recognized the altered tide of thought among our people in that moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, and now for first place, it's a story called Green Apples. In this beautifully wrought story, a young girl's desire for an apple from her neighbor's tree sparks unwanted knowledge. The author's attention to setting situates the reader squarely within the narrative. Quote, "The spacious yard was dotted with feathery Queen Anne's lace and puffy dandelions gone to seed. 3 Douglas firs, trunks knobby with scars from forgotten limbs, stood like sentries in front of the house, survivors of a century of storms and human development in this small patch on the southwest coast of Vancouver Island." And the winner of the $700 cash prize is Donnie Eve. Welcome, Donnie.
Thank you, Doretta, and congratulations to all the winners today. The drumming of pounding feet and a tonk caught Janie's attention as one of the boys kicked the empty coffee can from its resting place in the middle of the lawn, followed by distant laughter and the rattle of the can bouncing on hard ground. Becky cried out, "Come on, you guys." On another day, Janie would have moved or made a sound, allowing her 4-year-old sister to find her and relieve her from the impossible mission of being it in a game of kick the can with her brother Robbie and his friend Mike. Tonight, Janie had her eye on the Murphy's garden next door. With her elbows digging into the ground and chin propped on her hands, she had an unobstructed sight line to the Murphy's backyard. A bare bulb over the workshop door illuminated rows of lettuce, cabbage, carrots, and strawberries. White blossoms on the meticulously trellised peas glowed in the pale light. There was no fence between the two properties. When they first moved in, Mr. Murphy kept an eye on them as they played, wary, leaning silently on his rake. One day earlier in the year, when the rain let up and their mother sent them outside, their play had tumbled across the unseen line bordering the yards. He was friendly, warning them to be careful as he pointed out the tilled rows and bright green shoots of the emerging plants. Janie waved to Mrs. Murphy, watching from the kitchen window, then startled as Mrs. Murphy erupted onto the back porch, a frenzied clatter in her worn slippers and flapping apron. "You kids stay away," Mrs. Murphy screeched. "Keep to your own yard, you hear?" Their mother, pegging laundry on the clothesline, came to see what the shouting was about. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Murphy," she said. "It won't happen again." "The garden isn't a place for kids," Mrs. Murphy replied. "I don't even let my grandchildren play there." The sky had darkened and cool dampness seeped into Janie's sleeves as the dew settled. She stood and walked to the center of the lawn, brushing bits of leaf and grass from her clothing. I see you, you're it," Becky yelled gleefully. The boys emerged and joined them. "Hey guys," Janie said, "I have an idea." They ran, crouched like soldiers they'd seen on the news from Vietnam, dashing under whizzing helicopter blades, one by one in a single file beside the Murphy's house. When they reached the garden, Janie pressed her finger to her lips. She plucked 2 strawberries and popped them in her mouth before pointing out more to Becky. She grabbed handfuls of glossy pea pods, ripping them from the carefully tied vines, leaving wrecked tendrils and tattered stems drooping to the ground. The boys trampled tender lettuce heads as they searched for the biggest carrots. Janie knew all it would take was a whisper, and she could stop them. She watched Robbie trip over Mike's shoe and tumble into a row of cabbages as she filled the kangaroo pocket of her shirt with peas. An endless loop of her mother's voice, "You're the oldest, you know better," played in her head. There was no doubt they would pay for this tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of the adult winners. We now have the great honor of having Doretta Lau read to us from her own work, which I'm very much looking forward to. Doretta, please.
Thank you, Sean. I'm just going to read very quickly from a story from my short story collection. So this is from a story called Writing in Light. 1. Curtis called me at 9:30, waking me. I pretended I had been awake for hours, but he knew better, despite having met me only twice. A few days earlier, he had promised he would take me through Jeff Wall's latest New York exhibition before it closed, but we hadn't confirmed our appointment. "Good morning. I meant to wake you," Curtis said. "I'm at the gallery. They want to shut off the power, so you should arrive on the early side of 10:30, say 10:15. 10:15, I repeated. "See you then." I removed a book about Robert Smithson from a pile of clothes sitting on a chair so I could find the black dress I wanted to wear. For the last few months, I'd been thinking about Smithson's art, dinosaurs, fossils, and skeletons. Somehow I believed these elements would work in my thesis screenplay, though I wasn't sure what story I was trying to tell. I dressed quickly, but I was careful to look, as my mother might put it, presentable, in case I needed to deal with a gallery assistant. Girls who sat at the front desk of art galleries scared me, more so than record store clerks once did. Many things frightened me during this time: germs, vampires, suspension bridges, but I feared people the most. I discovered it was warmer on the street than in my apartment. My room faced a courtyard that didn't get much sunlight. An ex-boyfriend believed that an episode of Law and Order had been shot below my window last year. It seemed like there was always a television show or a movie being filmed in our neighborhood, and that I was moving between reality and fantasy whenever I left home. Although the walk to 116th Street subway station was a short one, I began to wonder if I would make it to the gallery, located midtown, by 10:15. For a moment, I considered taking a taxi, a luxury I could rarely indulge in, but the urge to be economical override the need to be in time. I walked to the subway stop and waited on the platform. The train seemed to take forever to come, a trick of perception. I leaned forward to see if I could spot the lights. It was dark in the tunnel. I began thinking of Jeff Wall's Double Self-Portrait, 1979. 2. In Double Self-Portrait, the artist looks at us from the corner of his eye. There are two Jeffs in the photograph, one wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and one in indigo rinsed jeans and a gray sweatshirt with the sleeves pushed back. The Jeff in jeans is wearing a watch. The other Jeff, the one in the white shirt, has his arms crossed, so it's impossible to know if there's a timepiece on either wrist. Behind the two Jeffs is a couch with a pink blanket on it. Jeff with a watch, the one who possesses the technology to measure the passing of time, is touching a papasan chair that's missing its cushion. The chair is white and looks to me like bleached bones in the desert. The man and his doppelganger are positioned within a room, perhaps located in a building in Vancouver, but that is of little importance. What matters is the look on Jeff's face, the way he is peering out at us, peering in at him. 3. On the train, there was a sleeping couple sprawled on the seats across from me. During my first semester of grad school, I took a photography class with Thomas Roma, who often quoted Robert Frost in his classroom critiques. When I looked at Roma's photographs, even the ones of gospel singers and lovers asleep on the subway, I thought of Frost's poetry. One afternoon, 2 days after I cried during his critique of my photographs, Roma told me he thought that writing and photography were the most similar of all the arts. He was certain that taking photographs would help me with my writing. He had once compiled a collection of photographs thinking only of Norman Mailer while he worked. That night, while reading a textbook for a film theory class, I discovered that photography is derived from a Greek word that translates to writing in light. This gave me comfort. I concluded that every art form was a way of telling a story, a record of a particular moment in time, even in cases where there was no discernible narrative. Through word and image, I would find a direction for my work. I could write in light. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doretta. That was great. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of our regular program. The prizes and the gift certificates and award certificates will all be mailed out next week. All participants in the junior and youth categories are also going to get achievement certificates, which will also be going out next week. I would like to thank everybody who participated and attended today. And once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors and everybody who worked on this program. Now, we did have an offer from Frank to sing some songs. Do you still want to do that, Frank? Or was that a joke?
Oh, that was a full offer, Sean.
Okay.
I think the word ersatz was used today. That was an ersatz offer.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So with that, I will ask everybody to have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all for supporting and participating in the arts in this region, and congratulations to all of the winners, and congratulations to everybody who entered a story. As was already mentioned today, that is a really big achievement, just getting a story in. And then to those people who actually won, wow, you guys are great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thank you
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations to everyone.
Thanks for the help, Doretta.
Thank you very much.
It was so wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you to everybody who contributed their time and effort to putting the contest on for us.